In the top stories, new ferry service launched connecting St. Kitts and neighboring islands. Luis Inácio Lula da Silva wins Brazil elections, and death toll from bridge collapse in India rises to 141. Hello and welcome to the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Today is Monday, the 31st of October, 2022. I'm Jason Davis. Nationally, a new ferry service has been launched connecting St. Kitts and neighboring islands. More in this report. Monday, October 31 saw the start of a new ferry service connecting St. Kitts, Saba and St. Martin. The Macana ferry docked at the Port Santa Marina and was welcomed by officials from the St. Christopher Air and Seaports Authority and the St. Kitts Tourism Authority. With me is the owner of the Macana ferry, Mr. Samuel Connor. Welcome, Mr. Connor. How does it feel, the launch of this new service connecting St. Kitts and Saba and St. Martin?
Very good. This is something I was looking forward to for a long time, and it was the dream of the Dutch government to have a connection between Statia and St. Kitts, and by extension we'll include Saba and St. Martin. So for us, for the Macana, it's a blessing.
What kind of benefits do you think this would bring for the two islands?
I think it's a whole cultural benefit because St. Kitts and Statia have that historic connection. And but for a while there was not a connection between islands, and this gave the people of Statia an opportunity to visit St. Kitts for medical or shopping purposes. So I think it's a win-win situation for the economy of St. Kitts and Statia.
How often will you be operating?
We'll be operating twice, 4 trips a week, twice on a Friday and twice on a Monday.
Okay, great. And how can people book a trip? Will they have to go online, or how does it done?
Well, you can book online by macanaferry.service.com, and we also have our local agents in St. Kitts. Shop It For Less is our agent here in St. Kitts.
Okay. Ship It For Less, okay.
Ship It For Less.
Okay, thank you very much. Now, on the St. Kitts Nevis side of things, we have Product Development Officer at the St. Kitts Authority, Golda Franks. Tell us, what does this new ferry service mean for St. Kitts?
Well, at the St. Kitts Tourism Authority, we are extremely excited for the Macana ferry service to be now coming into St. Kitts. What this means is that there's now an option for persons to travel to Saba, Statia and St. Martin, also for persons from those respective countries to come to St. Kitts when we're having various events, as well as when persons want a weekend getaway. There's also an option of travel.
We can get more information from Mr. Shervin White. He's the local agent for the Macana ferry service. What can you tell us about this new service?
Well, this new service that we have started here in St. Kitts, is a long-awaited service. To go to St. Martin, Statia and Saba, to go to Statia is $80 round trip. To go to Saba is $105 round trip, and to go to St. Martin, drumroll, is $190 round trip. So it's a cost-effective means of traveling right now, because the regional planes are so expensive. So this is a welcome thing to St. Kitts.
All right. And we definitely are looking forward to taking advantage of this trip. Thank you very much to all of you.
Thank you so much.
I've been speaking with several officials connected to the launch of this new Macana ferry service connecting St. Kitts, Saba and St. Martin. It officially kicked off on Monday, October 31. Reporting from the Port Santa Marina for ZIZ News, I'm Jason Davis. Prime Minister, the Honorable Dr. Terence Drew, says he's proud of the recent graduates of Cuban universities and who are now part of the local Cuban Alumni Association. During his presentation at the 17th Annual Cuban Graduation Ceremony on Saturday, the Prime Minister reflected on his time in Cuba, being an alumnus himself, and gave the graduates his commendations.
So in a sense, I am proud to see so many new graduates from various universities in Cuba, here with their support system, your families and friends. And I'm sure your loved ones are also quite proud of your accomplishment. And so in a sense, I too myself salute you. This year, the Cuban Alumni Association has chosen for the theme, Raising the Bar Through Higher Education. And raising the bar means taking bold, innovative and decisive steps to raise the standards and expectations expectations by creating something of a higher quality. It is about understanding the needs and deficiencies and knowing how to correct them. It is about educating yourself not only academically, but keeping abreast of social, cultural, and economic advancements. It's about finding that life balance to ensure that you can operate at your optimal level.
Graduate Khalees Farrell spoke of the seemingly distant goal when they first began studying and praised his fellow graduates.
I would just like to first of all say thank you to everyone who came out to this graduation ceremony. When we think about a building, any building that we have in life, a large house, any large construction project, we sometimes think to ourselves, how long will this building take to build? The many steps that have to be done, the work each person has to put in, and all of the different factors that play into the construction of that building. It's similar to how when we first went to Cuba, for most of us who went for 7 years, some of us 6, and we sit down and we think, wow, 2021, 2022, it sounds so far away. Will we really get there? What is really going to pass in all of this time for us to get to that future? But through perseverance, study, hard work, and dedication, we made it. And that's why we're having this ceremony tonight.
Certificates and awards were presented to each graduate just before the close of the ceremony. It was held at the Caribbean Confederation of Credit Unions CUNA Conference Center.
Training a doctor in the developed world costs.
In other news, the Inter-American Institute for Cooperation on Agriculture, or IECA delegation, held its Accountability Seminar 2022 at the St. Kitts Marriott Resort on Thursday. According to IECA's website, this annual event held provides an opportunity for the IECA office to reflect on the process that the office has made over the past year and keep stakeholders informed on their plans, activities, and achievements. During the seminar, Acting Permanent Secretary in St. Kitts' Minister of Agriculture, Miguel Fleming, delivered remarks on behalf of the Minister, the Honorable Samuel Duggins, and shared his hopes of strengthening the partnership between IECA and the Ministry. He said, quote, "The government of St. Kitts and Nevis is on the verge of transforming agriculture, and they're looking forward to working with IECA and other allied institutions, farmers, fishers, and cooperatives, public and private partners in the process," end quote. Mr. Fleming also highlighted the impact of IECA's presence in the Federation and spoke of the newfound realization of the agriculture sector's importance during times of crisis. He said, quote, "It's no secret that our food import bill is high, and with the recent COVID-19 challenges, everyone looked to agriculture to be our savior. An assessment was done to see how long we would be able to survive without our current livestock, crop produce, and fish. The government responded by creating a stimulus package which was somewhat disorganized, but we saw an increase in production then. Now we are back to normal," end quote. He also noted that IECA stepped in and sponsored rabbits, which were donated to households for security, and the recent Rabbit Festival was a testimony of that support. Meanwhile, Permanent Secretary in the Ministry of Agriculture on Nevis, Huey Sargent, also gave brief remarks that focused on IECA's support to the nation's food producers. He said, quote, "We're very grateful to our allied agencies, in this case IECA. Their presence and tangible support are invaluable to our sector in kind contributions, as well as efforts of capacity building for farmers, agro-processors, other primary producers, as well as staff at the departments," end quote. As part of the agenda, the IECA delegation celebrated its 30th anniversary in St. Kitts and Nevis and pledged to continue providing unwavering support to the Federation in efforts to transform the agriculture sector. The forum wrapped up with stakeholder discussions which immediately followed the presentations. Moving now to news on the regional scene. Lula da Silva has pulled off a political comeback in Brazil. He has won a tightly contested presidential runoff election against far-right incumbent Jair Bolsonaro. Al Jazeera's Lucia Newman reports.
An election that left many Brazilians in tears, some from happiness, others from the heartbreaking defeat of their candidate. Victorious left-wing candidate Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva arrived to address Brazilians at his headquarters when it was confirmed that he'd narrowly beaten incumbent President Jair Bolsonaro.
This is the victory of an immense democratic movement that was formed beyond political parties or ideologies or personal interests so that democracy could triumph.
It's been an astonishing comeback for Brazil's first working-class president, who served 2 successful terms from 2003 to the end of 2010, but who was later imprisoned for corruption. The conviction was later overturned, allowing him to run for a 3rd term.
Today's election is a little bit different because what we see is an election to defeat Bolsonaro, to get over these 4 very difficult years for Brazilians in general, especially for minorities.
That's why Tayana was crying.
We are women, we are artists, we are part of the LGBT community. It's been very difficult to live in a country that doesn't tolerate people as they are. Starting today, that will start to change.
But it won't be so simple after a bitter election that split Brazil in half.
The victory celebrations and speeches are understandable, but they do not hide the fact that President Jair Bolsonaro has yet to concede defeat, and neither have many of his staunchest supporters. And that doesn't bode well for what will clearly be the next government's greatest challenge, and that is to make Brazil whole again.
While leaders of both houses of Congress congratulated Lula for his win, some Bolsonaro supporters called for military intervention.
This is a fraud, and if people have to call on the army must intervene.
Bolsonaro himself hasn't said a word in public since casting his vote. The question is whether he plans to make good on earlier threats not to accept the election outcome. Lucia Newman, Al Jazeera, Sao Paulo.
Moving now to news on the international scene, the death toll from a bridge collapse in India has risen to at least 141. Military teams are searching for victims in the western state of Gujarat. Officials say hundreds of people fell into the river when cables supporting the pedestrian bridge snapped. Al Jazeera's Tony Cheng reports.
Hundreds of people crowd onto a colonial-era suspension bridge over the Machu River in western India. The cables appear to be straining under their weight. In the aftermath, survivors swim to the walkway, now dangling in the water. Boats searched in the darkness, swimmers trying to find those who hadn't surfaced. Ambulances raced from the riverbank, ferrying survivors to local hospitals. Among the victims, a large number of children.
Many children were enjoying holidays for Diwali, and they came here as tourists. All of them fell one on top of another. The bridge collapsed due to overloading.
As the new day dawned, the extent of the disaster became clear. The 230-meter bridge, now just twisted cables hanging across the river. Rescue efforts continued, but this was the search for bodies, not survivors. And questions about why a bridge that had been closed for renovations for 6 months and only reopened last week was clearly not safe.
A case has been filed on the agency which was overlooking the building and maintenance of the bridge under sections 304, 308 and 114 of the Code of Criminal Procedure.
Local hospitals are treating survivors, but the death toll is rising too, in what is one of India's worst accidents of the past decade. And painful memories, even for those who managed to escape.
My
2 young daughters, wife, sister-in-law, my wife's aunt and her 3 sons were on the bridge. While the rest of them crossed the bridge, my wife and her aunt remained there when the bridge suddenly collapsed and they fell into the river.
Recovery boats picked through the thick reeds floating on the river. More than 400 people were thought to be on the narrow bridge when it collapsed. Tony Cheng, Al Jazeera.
And now for the weather. Present weather is cloudy skies. The temperature for today is 31 degrees Celsius or 87 degrees Fahrenheit. Winds are a gentle breeze of 10 miles per hour from the east-northeast. Seas are moderate with waves not exceeding 5 feet. A weak instability and available moisture could trigger few passing showers across the area. The weather forecast in St. Kitts and Nevis today will be partly cloudy with a 40% or moderate chance of showers. Tonight will be partly cloudy with a 20% or slight chance of showers. Sunset today will be at 5:40 p.m., sunrise tomorrow 6:09 a.m. And that brings us to the end of the ZIZ Midday Newscast. Join us this evening for these stories and more in detail. Thank you for tuning in. I'm Jason Davis.